cold was immediate and hostile, biting into the exposed skin of Adam's face the moment he stepped off the local cab. He was at the end of the line, the Crestwood Heights commuter station, an isolated, dimly lit brick structure that felt like the terminus of the civilized world. The time was 2:45 a.m. He was here to catch the last express back to the city, having just finished an emergency structural repair miles away in the desolate suburbs. The station platform was a sheet of black, slick asphalt, reflecting the weak, sodium yellow lamps that sputtered overhead. Aside from his own heavy footsteps, the silence was absolute, broken only by the distant, rhythmic clack, clack, clack of a signal box operating somewhere far down the abandoned tracks. The air smelled of damp stone and stale exhaust. Adam pulled out his phone. The screen flashed a desperate, irritating message: no service. He checked his position, walked 10 feet, checked again. The signal indicator remained a single, stubborn bar, clinging to existence. He needed to contact dispatch about the payment code, but the technology refused to cooperate in this dead zone. He entered the waiting room. The atmosphere inside was slightly warmer, but heavy with the stale air of neglect. The room was dominated by two elements: a bank of hard plastic chairs, glistening unnaturally under the cold lights, and the electronic schedule board, its green text casting a sickly hue over the entire space. Adam approached the board. The 3:15 a.m. express, his only way out until morning, read delayed. Not 5 minutes late, not unknown, just the single unsettling word, delayed, permanently. A quick scan of the room confirmed the isolation. Aside from himself, only two other people occupied the entire station. The ticket agent sat behind the scratched acrylic window of his booth, hunched over a laptop. He was a young man, possibly college-aged, and severely nervous. His gaze flickered up constantly, sweeping the empty tracks with a terrified, anticipatory focus before snapping back to his screen. He was too jumpy, too alert for a late-night shift worker. The second figure was the cleaning lady. She was an elderly woman dressed in a faded blue uniform, positioned perfectly under the central light. She wasn't moving. She stood motionless, leaning heavily on a push broom whose plastic bristles were absolutely clean. Her face, etched with deep, profound exhaustion, was turned directly toward Adam, and her eyes were wide, dark, and utterly silent. She wasn't just observing him, she was staring. Adam felt the familiar prickle of professional dread, the moment when the mechanics of the ordinary fail, and the deeper structural flaws of reality begin to show. The cold outside was less unsettling than the unnaturally cold, heavy dread emanating from the waiting room. He knew with sudden certainty that the delayed sign on the board wasn't a scheduling problem, it was a warning. Adam chose a chair near the far wall, positioning himself to observe both the nervous ticket agent and the motionless cleaning lady. The silence in the waiting room was a pressurized dome, broken only by the persistent, muffled static hiss emanating from the ticket agent's booth. 5 minutes crawled by, each second feeling like 10. The cleaning lady hadn't moved. Her stare remained fixed on Adam with an unnerving, profound stillness. Then the auditory assault began. It started subtly, a high, thin scraping sound that seemed to originate from the ductwork above the ceiling tiles. Adam dismissed it as rats or shifting metal, but it escalated rapidly. The scraping transformed into unmistakable, heavy running footsteps. Thud, 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 thud. The rhythmic pounding was loud, heavy, and clearly moving at a desperate pace, traversing the entire length of the ceiling directly above the waiting room. The problem, as Adam instantly registered, was that there was no upper floor. The structure was a single-story commuter station. The fluorescent lights, which had been buzzing faintly, suddenly flickered violently. They plunged the room into a chaotic, strobing darkness before snapping back to their sickly yellow glow. The ticket agent, sitting directly beneath the source of the noise, visibly flinched. He gripped the edge of his desk with white-knuckled intensity, his gaze locked rigidly on his laptop screen. He refused to look up. His terror was so profound that denial was his only defense. But the cleaning lady, however, finally moved. Her expression remained impassive, but she slowly, deliberately began sweeping the broom, not toward the floor, but sweeping the air vertically, directly in the space where the footsteps were loudest above the ceiling tile. Adam stated, "It's structural stress," flatly, trying to sound authoritative, trying to convince himself. "Wind pressure in the attic space." The agent let out a sharp, choked gasp, shaking his head rapidly without lifting his eyes. No attic, sir. Just a shallow crawl space. And those aren't wind. The sound of the footsteps moved directly above the baggage claim area, a small, enclosed space near the far wall. Adam rose, grabbing the heavy-duty utility flashlight from his bag. He moved cautiously toward the source of the structural failure. As he crossed the threshold into the baggage claim area, an area dimly lit by a separate weak fixture, the cold hit him. It wasn't the ambient cold of the station. It was a sudden, localized, extreme coldness that felt like plunging his arm into a tank of liquid nitrogen. The temperature drop was instantaneous, isolating the area in a frigid, unnatural aura.
The cold was sharp, painful, and carried the faint, acrid scent of burnt iron. Adam's breath instantly turned to thick, blinding white fog. He could feel the energy being drawn from his body, the chilling, unmistakable sign of a presence. The running footsteps above abruptly ceased, replaced by a low, desperate hissing that seemed to emanate from the very walls. He was no longer investigating a faulty building. He was standing directly within the chill of an entity's territory. Adam retreated quickly from the suffocating cold of the baggage claim, slamming the utility flashlight back onto his shoulder. The cold followed him, clinging to his clothes, but its paralyzing intensity remained confined to that one spot. He knew the running was a distraction, an aggressive territorial display. The real structural failure, the problem he could fix, was the delayed sign. He walked back to the agent's booth, his professional focus overriding the terror. "That board," Adam stated, gesturing toward the schedule. "The 3:15 train. What's the maintenance code on that delayed status?" The agent, trembling visibly, but recognizing the authority in Adam's technical demand, reluctantly accessed the terminal. His fingers shook as he typed. It's not a code, sir. It's a recurring system freeze. It defaults to delayed every night between 2:58 a.m. and 4:05 a.m. It won't clear." "Show me the system log," Adam demanded, leaning close to the thick acrylic partition. He ignored the agent's frantic, sweating face and focused entirely on the code. The agent pulled up the detailed system log. Adam's eyes, trained to find flaws in infrastructure, scanned the timestamp data. The system wasn't malfunctioning randomly. Every night at 3:07 a.m. precisely, the entire scheduling matrix locked up. The final registered entry before the freeze was a single data packet. Train 772, Crestwood Heights, status, arrival. Adam felt the blood drain from his face. 3:07 a.m. What happened here on the morning of September 12, 1978? The agent stared blankly. I don't know, sir. That's before my time." "Look it up," Adam commanded, his voice low and urgent. "Look up train 772, Crestwood Heights, September 12, 1978. The agent fumbled with the historical database. The silence in the waiting room was absolute. Even the cleaning lady had paused her rhythmic sweep of the air. The historical log popped up. The details were clinical, devastating, and instantly recognizable as the structural failure Adam had been seeking. Train 772, southbound express, derailed at Crestwood Heights at 3:07 a.m. on September 12, 1978. A major mechanical failure combined with faulty track switching. The log listed massive casualties. Adam looked back at the electronic board. The time was currently 3:05 a.m. The system wasn't stuck. It was locked in a perpetual, agonizing loop of the moments before the disaster. The running footsteps above the ceiling, the frantic, heavy rhythm he heard, were the sounds of the trapped, terrified passengers and crew realizing their imminent destruction. "The clock is broken," Adam whispered, stepping back from the booth. "The entire station is stuck in the final 5 minutes of the wreck. They aren't going anywhere. They're trapped in the moment of their own destruction." The agent looked from the digital clock, 3:06 a.m., to the schedule board, delayed, and then, finally, terrified, he looked up at the ceiling. The running footsteps were starting again. The agent didn't need to be told to panic. He was already screaming, a thin, high sound of pure terror, as the running footsteps above escalated into a desperate, chaotic frenzy. Adam ignored the agent's collapse and the terrified sweeping motions of the cleaning lady. He had to find the physical mechanism controlling the time loop. He scanned the immediate infrastructure, his eyes searching for the oldest element, the root of the structural failure. His gaze landed on a heavy, disused wooden door labeled only timing and signal. Control room, Adam muttered, recognizing the archaic label. The master clock. He didn't waste time trying to pick the ancient lock. He braced his shoulder and slammed against the dry, brittle wood. The lock mechanism gave way with a splintering crack, and Adam surged into the room, flashlight first. The clock control room was a tomb of forgotten technology. The air was dead and thick with the smell of old oil and rust. The room was dominated by an entire wall covered in antique, ornate clocks. Not digital displays, but massive analog timepieces of brass and mahogany. Adam's light played across the faces, revealing the chilling uniformity. Every single clock, from the smallest regulator to the largest tower clock control, was frozen, their hands locked in place at 3:07 a.m., the moment of derailment. Adam moved toward the central control panel, a glass-covered relic housing the delicate electrical relays for the station's main timing pulses. But as he stepped deeper into the room, the auditory terror began. A sudden, intense rush of voices flooded his ears.
They weren't the heavy footsteps of the terrified. These were the trapped. Faint, high, desperate, and overwhelming, they surrounded him, speaking in a chaotic, multi-layered chorus of agony and confusion. "Don't touch it," one whispered sharply, right beside his ear. "You'll break the barrier." "Where are we? The train stopped," cried another, muffled and distant. "Please, I need to call home. Why won't the phone work?" pleaded a younger voice, full of hopeless confusion. The sheer volume of desperate, fractured voices was paralyzing. Adam dropped his flashlight in reflex. It rolled and stopped, casting a sickly beam across the wall of frozen clocks. He was surrounded by the final agonizing thoughts of the disaster's victims. Then, with a heavy thud, the wooden door he had just broken through slammed shut behind him, plunging the room back into near-total darkness, leaving him illuminated only by the frantic beam of his handheld lamp. The voices surrounding him intensified, closing in, demanding he leave the mechanism alone, demanding help, demanding an explanation Adam couldn't give. He was now sealed within the heart of the temporal structural failure, trapped with the terrified ghosts of September 12, 1978. Adam scrambled, ignoring the cacophony of voices and the searing terror. He snatched up his flashlight, his eyes locked on the control panel, the cold, technical heart of the temporal structural failure. He had to stop the loop, or he would be crushed by the phantom train along with the spirits. The digital display on the central control unit, which had been frozen, began to flicker violently. The numbers cycled erratically, racing through time until they abruptly locked 3:15 a.m., the time the express train was scheduled to arrive. As the clock struck the appointed moment, the room's main power failed completely. The fluorescent lights died with a violent pop, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The only light remaining was the frantic, shifting beam of Adam's handheld lamp. The voices surrounding him erupted into a collective, agonizing shriek, a pure sound of terror and realization. They weren't just trapped, they knew what was coming. Then he heard it, the sound of the approaching ghost train. It started as a low, mechanical moan, rapidly escalating into a deafening, metallic roar. The vibration was physical, shaking the floor, rattling the delicate clock mechanisms. The sound of the whistle pierced the darkness, high, agonizing, and impossibly close. Adam recoiled, backing into the wall, swinging his flashlight wildly. The room was not empty. The ancient walls of the clock control room began to shimmer. The thick plaster and brick dissolved before his eyes, becoming instantly transparent and fluid. The room was gone, replaced by the chaotic, terrifying scene of the derailment loop. He was no longer looking at the walls of the station. He was looking through the glass of the arriving train 772. Pressed against the transparent membrane where the wall used to be were dozens of phantom faces, the trapped passengers. They were not distorted. They were hyper-real, suspended in their final moment of terror. They were staring directly at Adam, their eyes wide with recognition, their mouths open in silent, agonizing screams. The heat of their fear was palpable, the desperation absolute. They weren't screaming for help, they were screaming for escape. Their hands, spectral and desperate, slammed against the transparent wall, their fingers stretching, trying to breach the thin barrier between their temporal prison and Adam's reality. They were pounding on the glass of the clock room, which was now the wall of their train. Adam saw the terror etched onto their faces, the final crushing moment of realization before the impact. The roaring of the train was deafening, filling the small room, the sheer kinetic energy of the phantom mass bearing down on him. The ghosts were trying to escape their destruction by dragging him into the final moments of their crash. The structural failure was complete. The past had physically merged with the present. Adam braced himself against the imminent crushing impact, knowing that if the barrier failed, the time loop would consume him whole. The terrifying roar of the ghost train was deafening, the phantom pressure of the derailed carriage crushing against the temporal barrier. Adam knew he had seconds. The passengers were clawing at the transparent wall, their silent screams vibrating through the floor. He wasn't dealing with ghosts seeking rest. He was dealing with an overwhelming kinetic force trapped in time, desperately seeking an exit into his reality. The structural failure wasn't in the past. It was in the present mechanism. He didn't need to fix the train. He needed to fix the clock. Adam dove toward the central timing panel, scrambling over the fallen flashlight. His hand reached for the main power reset switch, the only way to force the entire system to reboot and clear the fatal timestamp. As his fingers brushed the cold brass of the switch, a low, guttural shriek tore through the cacophony of the train's roar. The cleaning lady appeared in the broken doorway.
She was no longer elderly or tired. Her face was a terrifying, distorted mask of pure rage and malice. Her eyes were wide, black, and radiating a chilling energy. Her body was rigid, her movements unnaturally swift, gliding across the floor with impossible speed. She was moving to protect the mechanism, desperate to maintain the continuous, agonizing loop of 3:07 a.m. "No, you will not break the cycle!" Her voice shrieked, a dry, brittle sound that somehow cut through the sound of the phantom train. She lunged, her intent clear, to physically prevent Adam from touching the controls. Adam didn't hesitate. He knew this was the entity's main anchor, the key to keeping the failure active. He pulled the heavy, insulated stripping pliers from his belt. He was a fixer, and his tools were his weapons. The cleaning lady reached him first, her thin, strong hands locking around his arm with paralyzing cold. The freezing pressure threatened to crush the bone. "You will stay! You will witness!" she hissed, her distorted face inches from his own. Adam fought back with brute force, ripping his arm free of her icy grip. He immediately jammed the insulated pliers into the exposed copper housing of the main timing conduit. He wasn't aiming to fix the wire, he was aiming to overload the control unit. The result was a blinding crack and a violent electrical surge. A shower of white-hot sparks erupted from the panel, enveloping the cleaning lady in a blinding, instantaneous flash of energy. The effect was immediate and devastating. The spectral energy maintaining her form was violently disrupted. She let out a final, agonizing shriek, a sound of immense pain and fury, and then her figure crumpled, collapsing into a heap of old, dry clothes and a useless plastic broom. She had been temporarily disabled by the very power she was trying to control. Adam ignored the acrid smell of ozone and the stinging heat of the residual energy. He lunged back towards the brass reset switch, the roar of the ghost train now reaching its absolute, deafening climax. He had only seconds left before the phantom train reached the platform. Adam didn't hesitate. Ignoring the smoke curling from the scorched panel where the cleaning lady had fallen, he slammed his hand down onto the central brass reset switch. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The deafening kinetic roar of the ghost train vanished, as if a volume dial had been violently snapped off. The intense vibration stopped. The pressure that had been crushing the air from the room instantly lifted. The terrifying vision of the phantom passengers, their screaming faces pressed against the transparent walls, snapped back into solid dusty brick. The walls of the clock room were whole again. The temporal failure was fixed. Adam stood hyperventilating in the sudden, shocking silence. He looked at the control panel. All the ornate clocks had stopped dead. Not at 3:07 a.m., but at the exact moment he hit the reset, 3:15 a.m. The loop was broken. He stumbled out of the clock control room, ignoring the inert heap of dry clothing and the useless broom lying in the doorway. He returned to the main waiting room. The ticket agent was exactly where Adam had left him, huddled beneath the counter, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at the ceiling. The electronic schedule board above him was no longer stuck on delayed, it was blank. The station was cold, silent, and structurally sound once more. Adam didn't bother to explain. He picked up his toolkit, feeling the heavy exhaustion settle back in, and he walked out of the waiting room onto the black asphalt platform. The sky was now shifting from deep black to a bruised, cold gray.
dawn was finally arriving. As he stood on the platform, he heard the faint, distant but undeniable sound of a modern engine approaching. The real 3:15 a.m. express, now clearing the track failure, was finally arriving to pick him up. He glanced back at the abandoned station. He left the agent paralyzed by trauma and the spectral passengers released from their 1978 prison, but released into what? Into the structure of the station itself, waiting for the next temporal malfunction. Adam knew the truth now. The structural failure wasn't just the faulty wiring. It was the fact that some moments in time are too traumatic to fade. They become a permanent, repeating liability, a structural weakness in the fabric of reality. The victims weren't escaping, they were just shifting their waiting room. He climbed aboard the arriving express train. As the doors hissed shut, he looked out at the empty platform. He fixed the clock, but he didn't fix the memory. That station is still sitting out there. If I gave you the address, would you dare spend one night inside those walls? Tell me in the comments, should the Phixer ever go back behind that wall? The train pulled away, carrying Adam back towards the city's noise, leaving the cold, silent, and structurally compromised Crestwood Heights station behind. He knew one thing for certain: his next job was always waiting.